everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you could join me today. Today I'm going to show you some of the techniques that I use to paint the house portraits that I do. Here's a sample of some of the house portraits. And why do people want house portraits? Well, of the customers that I've had so far, mostly they would like it as a remembrance. Either they've moved out of a house, or perhaps it was a home that they visited a long time ago where their aunt lived and they went there for summer vacations. So it's a good childhood memory, or someone's downsizing. Or my most recent customer, her 3 sons had moved out of the home. They're in their 20s and 30s now. And she wanted to give them each a painting for Christmas to remember her home, their childhood home by. So anyway, I'm now going to show you how I create these house portraits. So now we're looking at some photos of my most recent client. We walked through her gardens and I took over 60 photos. And then this is one of the photos she chose. This is her second one, and this is the third photo that she chose. So I'll start by talking about the painting from this photo. First, I made a large photocopy of the photo, the same size as the canvas that I'm going to use, which is 16 by 20 inches. I begin by making a drawing of some of the basic shapes. I don't go into detail at this time. And then I start adding in some of the foreground and background. When you're painting in a more detailed style, rather than a quick gestural style, for instance, it takes time for your brain to compute all of the little parts that you're seeing and that you have to contend with. There was a bit of dappled sun on this photograph, but I wanted to include it anyway, because I wanted to show you how I start with adding some of the darks in the foreground. And here we can see I've added more details. Here I've started adding darks and lights on the part of the house we can see in the background. It's just very basic. What's dark, what's light, where are the shadows, and what I should work on next. I started working on the pots, the potted plants on the steps. And you can hardly see it, but there's a lawn chair on the steps. Oh, there we go. There's the chair. And so I started working more on the inside of the porch underneath of the roof. I think it's like a pergola, and you can actually see through to the house behind it. So I did those shadows. I just wanted to refer back to the photo that is my reference image, and you can see how dark it is where the pots are on the steps. I found it a little bit difficult to really see what color those pots were. So then I actually took that photograph and made it like I overexposed it, just so I could see the colors of those pots better. Overexposing it like this and cutting the contrast way back also lets me see some more of the details on those pots, like the little designs that are on them. Now that I've worked a bit on the house at the back, the porch, the steps, the chair, and those pots, I start adding some of the dark green, which is behind the plants. So I always look at what's behind and what's in front. What do I have to paint first before I can paint something else? I especially do this when I'm painting in acrylics because they dry fast and you can always paint over top of them. I like creating depth in that way. Now I'm going to add a bit more of the wall color, the blue, because the garden goes in front of that. And I start working on these stones that are in front of the chair. That's the whole part there in front of the chair is made out of stones, and I work on the colors. Here you can see that I've added a lot of plants to the garden and to the trees in the background. After working on the garden for a while, I decided to go back and work on the house. So you can see around the windows and the downspout, and there's more of a roof, like more shingles on the roof. I also went to the porch and added the window there, plus the bricks on the support for the pergola. And I also worked on the shadows that are on the roof of the pergola because it's a piece of glass. So I added more detail onto that. I also worked on the steps, adding more shadows and adjusting the color, and I worked a little bit more on those pots. I've done a lot of the darks and the medium tones in the garden, and now I'm adding the highlights, the small details, the little leaves that you can see, plus a hanging pot in front of the porch. Next, I delineate the trees in the background, plus add some of the boughs that are hanging on top of the porch. I add more plants in the background, plus now I'm starting to work on the shadows that are going to cross the stones. Here we can see a lot of the shadows. Next, I work on the chair, adding a lot of detail to the chair. Then I add flowers to all the potted plants and the hanging plant. And also behind the chair, I add a bit of greenery. I've touched up a few things, and the very last thing I do is I add the numbers to the house numbers in gold. I thought they turned out really well. So this is the final photo of this painting. I finished it now, and I was pretty happy with it. It's a similar process I use for all of my house portraits. I start with a very basic drawing and just adding a bit of color, then some darks and lights. I pick one area to start in, and then I go to another area and start there, and I build up the whole painting, adding colors, darks, lights, more details, and more details, until you finally have a completed painting. So I hope you enjoyed following along as I talked about how I paint the house portraits, what my process is. And now I will show you the other two paintings I did for the same client and the other 2 points of view of her house. I really enjoyed painting these paintings for her, and I think she was pretty happy with the end results too. Okay, here are parts 2 and 3 coming up. Thank you for watching. So with this next painting, I've also started off with a black and white photocopy of it, and I make various sizes of these photocopies. For instance, here I have placed a smaller one on top of my painting. And then I took a photograph of my painting in black and white. I just wanted to compare, was I creating the right tones of darkness and lightness in my painting? Here are 2 more places on the painting where I was comparing. I'm working on the porch, adding a lot of the detail. I like to compare the color photos as well, just to see if I'm getting the color tones correct. This is the bottom of the painting where the flowers are going to start. I began with a very dark green background, and I'm just comparing it to the photograph to see how high up I need to paint the dark area. I enjoyed this technique for painting the leaves. I just found the right size brush, dipped it in 2 or 3 tones of the same color green, and then just flipped the paintbrush back and forth to create a leaf shape. So this is the final version of the second painting, and here I'm showing you how I wrapped the painting around the edges, which proved to be actually quite a lot more work, but I think it was a nice effect. And here is the photograph for the third and final painting. third and final painting is complete. I really like this one. So there you have it, 3 paintings, 1 house. I really enjoyed sharing that with you, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as well. So if you like this video, please consider subscribing, liking, and adding a comment. Did you have a favorite of one of the paintings? Did you like them all equally? What would you like to say? I'd really appreciate hearing from you. All right, thank you so much. Bye.